The United States of America is changing its relationship with the people of Cuba.
For more than 50 years, the standoff between the United States and Cuba has been a constant. Now, that standoff seems to be ending. The U.S. will reestablish an embassy in Havana, some financial restrictions will be lifted, and limited travel to Cuba will finally be allowed. How did this turnaround happen? Well, let's get the basics out of the way. In 1959, Fidel Castro ousts U.S.-supported Fulgencio Batista as president of Cuba. There's a brief, very brief period of time in which the U.S. welcomes Castro, but by 1960, it becomes extremely clear that the two nations are not going to get along. Relations go south from there. Here are some highlights. We start with a trade embargo, then the U.S. botches an invasion at Cuba's Bay of Pigs, then we go to DEFCON 2 for the first time ever during the Cuban Missile Crisis, after which we impose a travel ban. By the 1970s, the U.S. and Cuba are fighting proxy wars from Central America to Africa. Cuba is the second country added to a State Department list of national sponsors of terrorism, and of course, who can forget Elian Gonzalez? In 2006, Fidel Castro falls ill and transfers power to his brother, Raul. With changes in the leadership of both countries, the U.S. and Cuba do begin to make some baby steps toward reestablishing ties. But in 2009, those efforts are derailed when American Alan Gross is arrested by Cuban authorities and sentenced to 15 years in prison for spying. By mid-2013, secret talks begin between the U.S. and Cuba. Those talks start in Canada and actually finish at the Vatican. Negotiations lead to this week's release of Gross, as well as a U.S. spy. In return, the U.S. releases 3 Cuban spies. With prisoner exchanges out of the way, the doors have been opened to finally ending that last major relic of the Cold War.